Mr. Gates had reached out to me to ask if he could have a meeting with Mr. Meadows about receiving a presidential pardon. Mr. Jordan talked about congressional pardons, but he never asked me for one. It was more for an update on whether the White House is going to pardon members of Congress. Mr. Gomer asked for one as well. Mr. Perry asked for a pardon too. I'm sorry, I need to cut you off.
Did he forgot him directly?
Yes, he did.
Donald Trump did not orchestrate the attempted overthrow of a Democratic election by himself. He had a cabal of House Republicans as his congressional henchmen, and he rallied them at the White House a few weeks before certification just to make sure that they were all on the same page. Those 11 Republicans and many more in the House were Trump's happy little warriors until hundreds of deranged MAGA supporters stormed the Capitol looking for blood, forcing them and their staffers to flee. Today, these people who literally ran from Trump's supporters are running towards Trump and ditching the oath they took to uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign or domestic. Foremost among them is House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who went from being tired of Trump to just being tired of justice.
Like, what are the steps?
Yes, so you clamp to the table, you set whatever's in front of you, then you look through it and you see basically looks like a three-dimensional hologram of whatever's in front of you. Then you can draw over that, and it's not as simple as just tracing.
I've had it with this guy. What he did is unacceptable. Nobody can defend that, and nobody should defend it.
I think the American public is tired of this. They want to see equal justice, and the idea that they utilize this to go after those who politically disagree with them is wrong.
Joining me now is Congressman Eric Swalwell of California, who was a House manager in Trump's second impeachment. What does Trump have on that guy?
Yeah, I mean, well, he made him speaker, right?
Yeah.
You saw Marjorie Taylor Greene waving her phone around after the 15th vote.
That's
when
his
she
boss.
was, she was passing the phone to all the holdouts. So he's got the job title. Marjorie Taylor Greene has the job, right? Let's be real.
Right.
And I think he just wants to have that like placard hanging over his office. I don't think he really has any core set of principles.
Yeah,
he's got the job. He runs the largest law firm in Washington, D.C., Insurrection LLC, which has one client, Donald Trump, and they do his bidding every day. But what is so disturbing about what he just said there is just because he is corrupt and his colleagues are corrupt doesn't mean the prosecutors are corrupt, right? So they project onto the prosecutors the way that they would handle this, which is, we would, of course, go after our political opponents if we were in power.
Right.
So they think that's what these prosecutors are doing.
Well, I mean, ironically, Donald Trump is vowing to do that. Like, that if he becomes president, he's saying, I'm going to do what he's now accusing this Justice Department of doing, which they're not. Let's talk about some of your colleagues. We heard Cassidy Hutchinson naming several people who asked for pardons. Can you think of as a former prosecutor yourself, of a reason to ask for a pardon if you did nothing wrong and had nothing to do with the insurrection?
No.
Okay. And so are there any of them who you suspect might need a pardon still?
Well, look, these guys were accomplices in an attempted overthrow of our government. And by the way, I think this isn't talked about enough. This was a blowout election. Like, Joe Biden won by nearly 8 million popular votes and ran the table in many of these, toss-up states. This wasn't Florida 2000 to take us back there. No, this was a blowout election by, all proportions, and they still were not willing to give up power. So yes, it became kind of like this pardon grab bag where they all, in desperation because of their own, culpability, were desperately seeking to escape accountability.
Let's talk about Barry Loudermilk. He is on the House Financial Services Committee and the
tour guide.
The tour guide, House Administration. His committee oversees Capitol security. Here he is giving a tour to some folks who wound up being members of the crowd that stormed the Capitol. I wonder how it feels for you to serve with people who may be aided and abetted, putting you and your staff, some of these are 20-something-year-old kids, at risk, and all of those police officers who they then turned around and said, we don't even want to vote to give them medals for not letting people kill us.
Yeah, well, I'll just say, as the brother to 2 police officers, it's especially crushing because it was always hard for me to go home and defend Democrats against my family who thought that Democrats didn't back the police enough, and then to see these guys the second that the police defended the Capitol against Donald Trump's friends.
Right.
They weren't backing the blue, they were backing the coup. And so that is personally crushing. But as far as a colleague doing this, like, tell me what's changed. Like, what has Speaker McCarthy done to make us safer, or the circumstances less likely that this would happen again? If anything, I think he's just put a bunch of green lights around the Capitol that this is okay and there's not going to be accountability.
And I do want to put up the list of people who did vote against, because I think this was one of the most shameful days in Republican Party history, to be honest with you. This was a congressional gold medal that was awarded to all the officers who responded on January 6th, some of whom are dead. Because they were brave and tried to do what police are supposed to do. Andy Biggs, Lauren Boebert, Michael Cloud, Andrew Clyde, who said it was a tourist event, normal tourism, but he was hiding behind a police officer on that day who had his gun out. Matt Gaetz, Warren Davidson, Louis Gohmert, Bob Good, Paul Gosar, Marjorie Greene, of course, Andy Harris, Jody Heiss, Thomas Massey, Mary Miller, Barry Moore. Have any of them that are still serving expressed, even in private, second thoughts about backing the insurrection, knowing that they also ran?
No, worse, they go to the D.C. jail to give, comfort and aid to the insurrectionists who attacked the Capitol, who attacked those police officers. And I'm telling you, Joy, the only antidote to all of this is unity, where Republicans and Democrats are going to condemn political violence, where we're going to condemn the rhetoric, and we're not going to politicize the good people in law enforcement who are just trying to, apply the facts to the law.
What do you make as from a prosecutor of the indictment, of the potential pending indictment, Donald Trump getting a target letter? Is there anyone, if you were prosecuting this case, who else would you send a letter to?
Well, anyone who worked with Donald Trump, to aim a mob at the Capitol or to try and undermine the credibility of the election through fake electors. But as a prosecutor, my closing argument would be quite simple. I would ask a jury, if you took Donald Trump out of the equation, if he had conceded when Mitch McConnell conceded after the electors in the states convened, if he had conceded after the press had called the election, if he had conceded, after he had lost every lawsuit, if he had done that, would January 6th still have happened? And I think the answer is it wouldn't. He could have convened so many in such a violent way to attack the Capitol.
I'd like to ask this of this guy. Here's Mike Pence.
Do you think that was an insurrection?
It was a tragic day. I've never used the word insurrection, Tucker, over the last 2 years, but it was a riot that took place at the Capitol that day.
I don't get it. They tried to kill him. They wanted to hang him. They brought a noose.
Yeah, a non-insurrection riot, right?
Who does he think's voting for? Do you understand? Can you explain to your Washington?
No, it's the same reason that he accepted, I think, the vice presidential role, which is he wanted to be president and is seeking any vehicle. I'm glad he did what he did that day, but had he done something like that much earlier, maybe January 6th never would have happened.
Yeah, and have you spoken with, I did speak with one Capitol Police officer today who, said, rather than feeling like happy that this potential indictment is coming, it just made him feel angrier. Have you spoken with other officers, and how are they feeling today?
Yeah, recently had a beer with Mike Fanone, who is still a subject of the attacks from the right every day. And for them, it's just justice. I don't think they're rooting for Donald Trump to be in handcuffs. I think they just want to know that he's going to be treated the same as everyone else, and he's not going to be treated better and even worse because of who he is.
Congressman Eric Swalwell, thank you very much.